Well, good afternoon and thanks for watching THV 11 News at noon. I'm Amanda Jaeger here with meteorologist Nathan Scott. I think everybody is just so happy we had such a gorgeous weekend. We want to see it continue.
It was a gorgeous weekend. Yeah, great weekend to check out all the vivid fall color around Central Arkansas. Now this morning you probably need the coat.
Oh, 100%.
It was in the 30s.
I had a little cardigan on and a coat on top.
But you don't need that now because we have rebounded very quickly into the 60s across the area. Lots of sunshine out there. 65 is the number right now in Little Rock, 71 in Texarkana, 62 in Fort Smith. Wall-to-wall sunshine across the state. And it's all because we've got this breeze moving in from the south. And that is making for a breezy day in some parts of the area. That breeze kicking in from the south about 10 to 15 miles per hour. So temperatures today, unseasonably warm for this time of year, topping out into, I think, the upper 60s to lower 70s if you're watching us in Hot Springs, Arkadelphia, Camden, and it's going to be even warmer going into Tuesday. This is all ahead of a cold front. That cold front will be arriving here. You see the rain chance going up by later Wednesday night, and it exits by Thursday morning. I'll have more on that front and how much cooler it will get behind this front coming up.
This afternoon, the former Lonoke County deputy accused of shooting and killing an unarmed teenager will go before a judge. Michael Davis is charged with felony manslaughter in the June shooting of 17-year-old Hunter Britton. He faces 3 to 10 years in prison if convicted. The pretrial hearing is set for 2 p.m. at the Lonoke County Courthouse. We'll have a crew there bringing us the very latest for tonight at 5 and 6. Closing arguments have begun in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. The 18-year-old from Illinois claims he acted in self-defense when he fatally shot 2 people and wounded a third last year in Kenosha, Wisconsin. This was during a tense night of protests over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Rittenhouse faces multiple charges, including intentional homicide. Nancy Chin has more from Wisconsin.
Kyle told his side of the story, and it was the truth.
Wendy Rittenhouse is defending her son Kyle's actions on August 25, 2020, when he traveled to Kenosha to, as he says, protect people's property. But during the tense night of protests, Rittenhouse, armed with an AR-15 style weapon, shot 3 people, killing 2 of them.
Kyle's nature is to help people.
So in talking to him, he does regret going that night now?
Yeah, he does.
But the prosecutor painted a different picture.
The defendant fled the scene of the dead body of Joseph Rosenbaum without stopping to offer any aid whatsoever.
The jury heard from more than 30 witnesses over 8 days about what happened that night.
I thought that the defendant was an active shooter.
One of the most dramatic moments was Rittenhouse himself describing what happened.
There were 3 people right there.
Take a deep breath, Kyle.
What was going on in your mind as you saw him?
Scared, overwhelmed, frightened. I didn't want to see my son like that.
On Friday, the judge indicated the jury will likely be able to consider lesser charges in the case.
The more charges, the more chance of conviction.
CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman.
The upside for a defendant in the case of lesser included offenses is that if there is a conviction of a lesser included offense, the defendant would face a much lesser punishment.
18 jurors heard the case. Today, 12 will be randomly selected to decide the verdict. And because this is a complicated case, that verdict could take a while. But if convicted of the most serious charges, Rittenhouse could face life in prison. Nancy Chin, CBS News, Kenosha, Wisconsin.
The judge has already dismissed the misdemeanor weapons charge, and Wisconsin's governor has activated about 500 National Guard troops to help respond to any protests of the verdict. CHI St. Vincent is expanding visitation policies this week. Patients can now have up to 2 visitors at one time. Before today, people staying in the hospital were limited to 1 visitor at a time, but could receive multiple visitors within a day. All visitors must still go through a temperature screening and wear a mask. A change in policy comes as COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations continue to drop here in Arkansas. And taking a look at our numbers from this weekend, 1,412 new cases were reported over the last 3 days. While still pretty low, this weekend's jump is a 10% increase over last weekend's, with about 600 more active cases compared to a week ago. But the good news is we aren't seeing a rise in hospitalizations yet. Right now, there are 282 COVID patients in Arkansas hospitals. That's 8 fewer than last Monday. And this afternoon, the governor is giving an update on the state's latest response to the virus. Today's press conference is set for 1:30 at the state capitol. The governor is also expected to discuss his recent trip to Israel. We'll be there, and you can watch the conference live on thv11.com or our mobile app. And the governor's COVID reports and briefings have truly changed the way our leaders communicate with us. But just how much have things changed? THV11's Sarah Horbakowitz took that question to the governor himself in an exclusive one-on-one sit-down you'll only see right here on THV11.
This time last year, news headlines in Arkansas were tough.
We are in a public health emergency.
And while things are starting to look up, there's still a long way to go.
I continue to advocate for everyone that is eligible to be vaccinated.
Tasked with sharing these important updates amid the pandemic, state governors were thrust into a new spotlight.
You've worked in politics a long time. Did you ever expect to kind of be working in this way?
Well, I certainly never thought I'd work during a pandemic.
Whether it's the latest COVID numbers or coordinating the rollout of the Pfizer vaccine for young kids, the pandemic has put politicians into an unprecedented crisis response mode.
I saw communication in action post 9/11. I was a part of that, and that carried on. It made me realize at the very beginning of this pandemic, communication will be critical.
The governor's communication now more frequent with Washington.
I was on the call today with the White House.
And even more so with constituents.
Whenever we had trouble getting personal protective equipment, trying to get it in the global market and the challenges we face, I shared that information with everybody. I wanted them to walk along the path of leadership with me.
To date, Governor Asa Hutchinson has delivered 207 COVID briefings.
Thank you for joining us today for the weekly update.
A form of communication that's become an expectation for Arkansans, even as the immediate urgency of the pandemic wanes.
Every Tuesday or Wednesday, you've been booked. You've been doing these COVID briefings. Do you see that continuing?
I'll continue doing weekly updates, and you're right. I want to get away from COVID just as much as everybody else does.
Topics ranging from updates on redistricting to eviction aid to local rice farming data, bringing more Arkansans into the statewide conversation.
That's what's changed since I've been governor, is the ability to communicate so directly to really each individual voter in the state.
And showcasing a digital record of history.
I probably need a couple years to look back and say history will tell us the mistakes that were made or not made. By and large, I think the decisions we made were reflective of Arkansas and fit our state and worked.
Even if they weren't always popular.
I believe you listen to science, I believe in the data, and you follow that, but you also have to understand Arkansas and understand what people will accept.
As he preps for the next briefing and looks towards the future.
Are you hoping whoever is the next governor that they'll continue kind of this direct communication with constituents?
Oh, I think they'll figure out their own path. But, that direct communication and the importance of communication will not change whoever is governor.
One of former President Trump's most trusted White House advisors is now in federal custody and facing criminal charges. Steve Bannon surrendered to authorities this morning. The former chief strategist in the Trump administration is charged with 2 counts of contempt of Congress for refusing to appear for a deposition and provide documents to the House Select Committee that's investigating the January 6th Capitol attack. Each count carries a maximum penalty of $1,000 fine and year in jail. Bannon is set to be arraigned in federal court this afternoon. In other news, President Biden will sign his more than $1 trillion infrastructure bill into law this afternoon. The bill includes billions for physical infrastructure such as America's roads and bridges and public transportation. It also modernizes and expands the broadband infrastructure and includes $55 billion in clean water investments. Meanwhile, the other big piece of the president's legislative agenda, that nearly $2 trillion spending plan, is still being hammered out by Democrats in Congress. And today is the deadline for you to register for the child tax credit if you're not already receiving one. So far, more than $15 billion has been distributed to families with children up to 17 years old. The distributions were based on 2020 tax returns. Families who did not file can use the IRS's non-filer tool to register. Payments of as much as $300 per child are set to end in December.